Yesterday, I gave a talk, and for those who were not there yesterday, I just want to say that I talked about some facts about Muslims. And the main thing I want to say again is that they are people who love the Lord and they want to please Him. But unfortunately, they are like Saul, exactly like Saul. He loves the Lord, he wants to please Him, but he didn't encounter Him. He didn't meet Him, the true Lord. And we met Him, but not because we are good. It is because His grace. So it is His grace that helped us to know the true God. But they are people who want to please God, they worship God, they pray 5 times a day. They are a missionary. They want to call people to Christ. I also talked about the things that really attract Muslims to the Christian faith. I talked about the Christian lifestyle. I talked about visions and dreams. I talked about love. And the main last point is the importance of love and engagement with the Muslims. We cannot just sit back and tell them come to Christ or share with them the 4 spiritual laws or anything like this. It's not like that. We have to engage, we have to walk with them and love them genuinely. And I want to remind you about the question of the Imam who said, would you continue to love me if I didn't convert? And this Imam is saying, is your love unconditional? Is your love unconditional? And I think this is what we can do. I also would like to remind you that I said this. I said it's our duty to build the bridges of love. And God, on His time and in His way, He crosses over these bridges. We don't convert people. It is the Holy Spirit that converts people. It's not us. So all the time we need to build the bridges. And we cannot build the bridges unless we engage. Now I would like to talk now about how we engage in the Diocese of Egypt, how we engage with Muslims. This photo I took to 2 secondary school students in a Catholic Christian school in the Malik, very close to the cathedral. It's called St. Joseph School. And I frequently visit this school because the principal, the headmaster, she's a nun. She invited me to be there and to talk to the children. And some of you know that I like photography. And I said to her I would like to come and take some photographs because I'm participating. And I took this picture and I felt this is the spirit we need to have in this photo. It is this kind of mutual love and a mutual relationship. It's like a journey together. One is Christian and one is a Muslim. Just to remind you, the Islamic world has known to have the color green, the green color. It is the color of the flag of Saudi Arabia. It is everything green is Islamic. So the intense green is where the Muslims are populated more in these countries. So you can see in the Arab world there are more Muslims and also in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and these places. The other very soft, light green has Muslim presence, but not as much as the dense green. This is very important slide. I mentioned it yesterday, that the vast majority of Muslims are the big circle, are people who are peaceful, who like to please God, they pray, but the Islamists, I think they are much smaller than this big circle, are political Islamists. They are Muslims, but they have ambitions to rule. They want to resume the caliphate once again. So they want to have the ummah, the nation, the big Islamic. They want to turn the whole world into Muslim world. These are the Islamists, and they use politics for this. And the third circle, the Salafis or the Salafists, are people who are want to purge Islam from anything that is not right, is not according to the Sharia. They want to have a pure Islam. They feel that some Muslims are contaminated by this world, and they want to return back to the Salaf, which is the ancestors, the fathers. They want to go back. They are very much literal in their understanding and literal in their interpretation of the Quran and the Sunnah, which is the saying of Muhammad. These are the Salafists. And the jihadists are very minority group that use arms and weapons in order to correct things and change things on the ground. But remember that the vast majority of Muslims are peaceful people, and they want to please God. This picture is actually Muslims praying at Tahrir Square in Cairo during the 25th of January revolution. You can see the multitude, how they were praying. But you probably heard that during their prayers on Friday in Tahrir Square, the Christians were surrounding them to guard them, which was moving, really moving, that the Christians guard the Muslims while praying like this. And when the Christian did that, the Muslim also did exactly the same. The Christians started to sing hymns and songs, Christian songs, and the Muslim surrounded them as well. But the question, how the church can witness in the Islamic world. And I want to learn from Jesus. He is our example. And Jesus, one of his encounters, he encountered the Samaritan woman who was a Samaritan. And in the eyes of the Jews, the Samaritans are defiled nation, and they are not to communicate with them and not to deal with them. However, Jesus made an effort to go to this little village or little town, Sichar, in order to meet with this lady. And if you remember, I'm sure you remember the story, the disciples came and found him talking with Samaritan women, and they were really surprised. First, because he's talking to a Samaritan. Second, because he's talking to a woman. And women at that time, in a male-dominant society, in which still continue in the Middle East. Is not many leaders talk with women, but he did, and he made an effort, and he broke walls in order to speak with the Samaritan women. But the other thing, he identified himself with her. He said, "Give me." She came to drink, to get water, and he said, "Give me water." So in a way, he is saying, "I am a human being like you. I am human like you. You came because you are thirsty. I am thirsty. You came to get water. I want some of your water." So he identified with her. And he built on her strengths. When she told him that she doesn't have any husbands now, and he said to her, "You have well said." He knew her background very well. He said to her, "Yes, you had 5 husbands before," but he didn't mention this. But what he said, he grasped the fact that she is saying the truth, and he built on this. He built on this, on the strengths, and then he answered her question, because when he built a bridge between her and him, she started to ask him questions, and that is the case with Muslims always. When you build the bridges of friendship, they start to ask about the faith. And it came a point when he revealed himself. "I who speak to you am he." The other parable Jesus gave is the parable of the Good Samaritan. And what Jesus is saying is that loving the neighbor is linked with the love of God. Love God and love your neighbor. It's like if you love God, the consequence is to love your neighbor. And the other fact is the neighbor could be very different from you. The neighbor not necessarily is the one who share the same faith at all. Or even in this case, the neighbor is defiled. But still we have the commandment is to love this neighbor. And then he showed the Samaritan loving in action. He's actually put himself at risk in actually stopping in this dangerous place to help the Jewish man because it is dangerous. He could meet or face the same risk the Jewish man faced. He could be also attacked by thieves but he put himself at risk. In these two parables, we see that Jesus is actually building bridges. He discovering common grounds between him and the Samaritan women. And he is saying love is actually not in words, but in real action. When we come to the apostles, I believe that the great conversion that happened to the church is at the day of Pentecost. But I think the church went through another kind of conversion. And this conversion is when Peter visited Cornelius at his home. This was the beginning of going into the Gentiles, into the nations different from. So the dream or the vision that Peter have seen transformed Peter completely, and he was able to go and do something he would not, as a Jewish person, do. And he said this to Cornelius: God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. And we should do this also with Muslims. When you see Muslims, remember very important thing, that they are also carry the image of God. They are created as the image of God, and they carry this image. They are created by God. So we cannot say they are unclean. Even if people are like terrorists, like Saul. Saul was a terrorist. By all the contemporary measures, Saul is a terrorist. He could be a member of Al-Qaeda. But God met him and transformed his life. So the door is open through Jesus to all people, all nations, all religions, all faith people. I think also we need to learn from Saul when he went to Athens. When he went to Athens and saw these altars, and saw the altar of unknown God, when he started to talk with the people, the philosophers and the people in Athens, he said, I can see that you in every way religious, and you are so religious to the degree that you have an altar of unknown God. You are wonderful that you have this, and I came to talk to you about this unknown God. So in a way, he also tried to find and identify something in common, something he can relate to. And this is very important when we deal with Muslims, because we have a lot in common. In fact, Muslims have a lot from the Jewish tradition, a lot of Jewish tradition. Even the way they pray like Jewish. If you saw Jewish praying, it's like Muslim praying as well. A lot of Jewish things. I remember 2 years ago, I came here with a group of people, Jewish, Muslims, and Christians. And the Muslims didn't want to come near to the Jewish. But right at JFK, when the Egyptian group arrived, they said to them, wait a bit, because there is another group coming. And they were waiting like this, and they saw El Al aircraft coming, and they were so nervous. And here is a Jewish group coming, having a lift with them in the same minibus or microbus, and they were so nervous about this. But at the end, the Muslims, I came with the Grand Mufti of Egypt to talk with them, and the Muslims were saying, we discovered that there is a lot in common between us and the Jewish, a lot in common. And they said, we never imagined that we can go and attend the synagogue. And the Jewish said the same. We never imagined that we go into a mosque. So when we meet and talk, we discover common grounds. The early church fathers, I want to tell you this story of St. Francis Assisi. And I like a book written by an Australian. It's about the fool monk. This is what he was called, because he had a heart to come to the Islamic world, and he couldn't find a way to come to the Islamic world except in a ship of the Crusaders. He didn't like the idea of fighting, but he used the ship of the Crusaders to come to Egypt, to Cairo. And he left the camp of the Crusaders and walked to the camp of the Muslims. And he was wearing very dirty cassock or alb, or this brown things, and barefooted. And he went to the guards of the Sultan, the king. His name Al-Kamil Muhammad. And he said, I want to meet the Sultan. They beated him. And at that time, the Sultan actually said, if anyone would get me ahead of a crusader, he will be rewarded. So they wanted to kill him. But he was like so fool to go and walk by himself into the Muslim camps. And he shocked the guards, and the guards came to the Sultan and said to him, there is a fool person, fool monk, who came and wanted to see you. And he said this to the Sultan, we are sent by God, not by men, to show him and his subjects the way of salvation and to proclaim the truth of the gospel message. He said Jesus does not accept this war. He said to the Sultan, what the Christian is doing is not Jesus' teaching. And amazingly, this fool monk, fool in the eyes, he wins the heart of the Sultan. And he said to him, what do you want? He said, I want to come and serve the Egyptian. And he welcomed him. And Francis went back and came back to Egypt and formed the Franciscan order, who are still serving in Egypt today. I just want to remind you that Francis is the one who said we need to preach the gospel by all means, and if necessary, by words. This is what he did. So just to remind you, this is what we learned: to engage with Muslim, to find common ground and build bridges, to build on strengths, as in the case of the Samaritan woman, to show the love in action is to serve like the Good Samaritan, to listen to other with respect, and to love and share our faith with boldness and love. You know, this principle, the last number 5, is something that was taught to us by Archbishop George Carey. George Carey, he is the one who came and started to speak about dialogue. And he was so loving when he came to Al-Azhar. But in the same time, he said to the Muslim imams who gathered in Al-Azhar, we have major differences. We have major differences. And these differences is about the divinity of Christ. I believe that Jesus is Lord. And I was sitting, didn't know if we are going to come out of this lecture room in one piece or in fragment. But when we left the room, we went to have lunch with the Grand Imam, and beside me, a very important person sat and said, I like this man, because he didn't say, we are the same. He said, we have major differences. But he said it in a loving way. We have major differences. I believe that Jesus is Lord. Many people use dialogue and talk and say, we are the children of Abraham. We are all going to heaven. Everyone has his way. So reduce Jesus to only a way instead of the way. I want to tell you about Temple Gardener. Temple Gardener, who came to Egypt in 1800. He, like over 100 years ago, when the word dialogue was not brought to the dictionary of nowadays, dialogue. He had a dialogue where he opened his own house, he and his colleague Douglas Thornton. And every Thursday, he offered coffee and tea to Muslim students from Al-Azhar, and they talk. He listened to them, and he shared with them. Sometimes they get angry, and they break the furniture, and he fixed it, and and the next Thursday they come again, and he writes their what they say. He writes their attacks in a magazine called Occident and Orient that he established. He even writes their own ideas and then respond to them. So listening with respect and love, and sharing with boldness and love is very important. He is the one who used drama in order to preach the gospel when many people at that time were illiterate. So he used drama. And one of the famous one is the prodigal son. He learned Arabic very well. He even wrote Arabic hymns, which we sing today in the church in Egypt. He is the one who really did a lot of work among Muslims. Interfaith dialogue, people are very suspicious when they hear the word interfaith dialogue. They think it is about compromise. Dialogue, how can we dialogue with Muslims? But I want to say that interfaith dialogue creates a wonderful, friendly atmosphere, which they say what they like to say, we say what we like to say, without threats, without being nervous, without any fear. We talk with each other. It's a great window. I remember Bishop Morris Sinclair. Some of you heard of him, perhaps. Bishop Morris Sinclair. He was the bishop of Southern Cone before Greg Venable. He came to help me in Egypt, and when he saw that we are doing interfaith dialogue, he came and said to me, I never thought that interfaith dialogue creates such window for evangelism. Because you talk and you share without fear. And in this picture, Rowan William is giving a very nice lecture in 2004. You can see this lecture, because afterwards some schools started to teach this lecture. He talks here in this lecture about Holy Trinity, about Trinity, explaining the Trinity, which is very difficult. But I remember very well that after his lecture, three imams, the Grand Imam, the Grand Mufti, and the deputy of the Grand Imam, the three of them said, so you believe in the oneness of God. This is the first time we understand Trinity. So please, you will find this lecture in the internet. And I know that the University of Yale teaches his lecture on Trinity. I accompanied him. I actually arranged for him to give a lecture at the Islamic Cole University in Libya, in Tripoli. And he chose the theme, God's Revelation. And when he came to a very important point, Of course, he said God revealed himself in nature and this and this and this. And then he said, for me, as a Christian, God revealed himself in the person of his son, Jesus Christ. It was difficult for the hearer, but he witnessed for Jesus in this. Fortunately, we are called after the lecture immediately to meet Gaddafi. And we left Bishop Belmask, the Bishop of North Africa, to receive all the stones from... It was not stones, but some hard questions, because they didn't like the fact what Rowan said. God revealed himself to me as a Christian in Jesus Christ. So dialogue is important. From 2013, we started a project called Together for Egypt. That's after the revolution, and at a very difficult context, when we Christians started to feel that we are second citizens. And Egypt was at the edge of civil war. There was a lot of violence. There is a lot of riots. The Muslim Brotherhood is ruling. Many Islamic groups were released from prisons. And at this very difficult time, this idea came of having 30 imams and 30 priests to stay together for 3 days, to talk, to hear lectures, to visit places, and to repeat this 4 times a year, the same 30 and 30. Rosie actually was very much involved in writing this proposal, because we got funding from the Dutch government with this. And I can't tell you how amazing this was. The first time, after the first 3 days, I went to the Al-Azhar, the office of the Grand Imam. And all the priests and the imams gathered together. And one of the imams, young imams, stood up and said to the Grand Imam this: I used to walk away when I see a priest wearing black. I used to change my direction and go to another street, because I didn't want to see. Now, you brought us here. We ate together. We shared a room in the hotel together. We visited Christian and Muslim places together. We talked about what we are going through, and my thinking is completely transformed. Another time when they come to the All Saints Cathedral Hall, this was very thoughtful of my chaplain then, Reverend Drew Schmutzer, some of you know, and Rosie, that they bought Bibles and put it in track holders by the hall. And the imams took all the Bibles and we had to fill them again. And we started to say, this is a wonderful game. Let us do this every time. And they do. They take not 1, 2, 3, because they want to give to others. This Together for Egypt created a beautiful atmosphere. Now these imams and priests go together and visit schools, visit hospitals, and recently they had a big gathering that was attended by Egyptian young people who had lots of questions and things. And this is like picking the stones from the ground and make it ready for planting the seeds. We noticed that sometimes interfaith dialogue at the level of the religious leaders does not go down to the grassroots level, to the people in the street. So we started to think of a new way, and one of the centers that is really, I'm so pleased and thank God for this center, is Arkan Center in St. Mark Cathedral in Alexandria. It's used the place of the cathedral, and Muslim and Christians come together, and the coordinator of this program in Arkan say to them, 3 things you should not talk about while you are here in the center. You don't talk about soccer. and you don't talk about politics, and you don't talk about religion. And these are the very 3 things they talk about when they come while they are learning photography together, while they are learning painting and drama and music and things. This is what they talk about, is faith, because people in the Middle East are religious by nature. Faith is very important for them. It's like food for them. We had an idea 2 years ago to have to make the way of salvation from the creation until Jesus comes again in art, using art. And 11 Christian artists from different denominations participated in this art exhibition. I invited the Pope to come in at All Saints to open this. And in fact, I never thought that the Pope will come to another denomination. In fact, he was heavily criticized because of this visit, to come to speak in the cathedral and then to go and open this. And all what we want is to really put the gospel story through art, which is a new way. It's like reaching out to the grassroots. This is a way of reaching out to the grassroots. Many Muslims came to this, not only Christians, over the 2 weeks where and some of them are actually journalists, and they put this in YouTube and other articles as well. Music and singing is something that is a common ground that create this window. Recently, we had a concert at the cathedral, several concerts actually, but this concert was attended by about 1,000 people who came to the cathedral, and they filled, and even in the balcony, you can see people standing in the balcony, Muslims and Christians coming to listen to music and build a relation with each other. What we want is to make the church accessible, make the church open, break the walls between us and the community so that people can come into the church. Handcrafts and art, again, in our community development centers, this is something that bring Muslims and Christians to sit down and do handcrafts together, and really people get to know each other and start to ask questions to each other. Literacy classes like community development and microloans help Christian and Muslims with microloans. We have a very, very successful program of microloans helping poor Christians and Muslims to stand on their legs and become self-supporting. I was talking before this about schools, and I said one Christian school provide ministry like 20 churches or even more, because Christian schools are rare, and the Muslim population want to get their children into the schools. And we have a school in a place called Mouneer, and we had a project called Planting a Tree of Hope. And it was amazing after 1 year to listen to the children, what they learned, Christian and Muslim, what they learned from each other, what they learned when they visited Christian places and Muslim places. Again, the Ministry of Healing through the hospitals, we have 2 hospitals now and several clinics, is an amazing witness to the people. People ask, why do you do this? Why do you care? And this is always an opportunity. Health outreach. The doctors goes into villages around and see every time they go twice a week. Every time they see 100 patients. Sometimes they park by a mosque and even use one of the rooms in the mosque to see the people. And when you hear the words of the people about, they know these are all Christian doctors. You would be so encouraged to hear this. Schools are practical daily dialogue, because in the assembly in the morning, there is by law some Quranic verses should be said, but also Christian children use Bible verses to hear. And children learn from each other in an amazing way, even the little things. Of course, we have Orthodox Christians in this school. When they hear the bell of the Coptic church, which is next door, they cross themselves. So the Muslim children learned how to cross themselves. And the parents came very angry because their children cross themselves. And it's always an opportunity to say, we don't teach them to cross themselves. This is what they learn from each other. But the atmosphere between Christians and Muslims children is amazing. I remember the governor said, we are going to have a big party, and I want some from the Episcopal school to come and sing. And there was like a 6-year-old girl, and she went with her mother to sing. And the mother said she learned a beautiful song. Let her sing. And she sang. But the people around her, but this is a Christian song. Why we would do this? She's a Muslim girl. And she came and shared this with me. But she did sing this song in the party. We have the Menara School for Special Needs. Many of the parents appreciate this very much, that the Christians care for the marginalized and for the special needs. The School for the Deaf, we use only to because it is in the compound of the church, we used only to accept the Christian children. Now we accept Muslims as well. We got the permission to do this. That is a church for the deaf. And we have a training center that teaches English as a second language and computer as well. And again, it is an opportunity to talk. Thank you for listening. This is just some of the things I wanted to share, how we build the bridges in Egypt. Thank you.